You wake up in the morning and instantly you know something's wrong. You're feverish, you ache all over, and you're afraid you're going to be sick to your stomach. You hope you're not coming down with something. After a few more grueling days of fighting it, you finally admit that it's time to see the doctor. Maybe he can give you a pill or something that will kill this virus. The next day at your doctor's office, you describe the overwhelming exhaustion you feel, the blinding headache you've had for days, the aching pain all over your body. Flushing with embarrassment, you finally tell him about the more, icky symptoms you've been experiencing, like the vomiting, cramps, and the diarrhea that have had you practically living in the bathroom between bouts of restless, feverish sleep. "I'm desperate, doc," you say. "Is there a pill or an antibiotic or something I can take?" To your dismay, he shakes his head and he says, "Unfortunately, an antibiotic won't do anything to help you. We'll take blood and urine samples and run a culture test to be sure, but it sounds to me like you have a viral infection, and unfortunately, antibiotics don't work on viruses." This is news to you, so your doctor patiently explains to you exactly what a virus is and how viral infections, like the one you apparently have, are different from bacterial ones. Viruses and bacteria are both microbes or tiny organisms that are too small to see with the naked eye. Viruses are much smaller than bacteria. The largest virus is smaller than the tiniest bacteria, and it takes a power microscope to be able to observe these tiny intruders. Both bacteria and viruses spread through contact with infected people, animals, surfaces, or food. And both can cause symptoms like yours: digestive upset, muscle and joint pain, and respiratory distress. But the similarities end there. Bacteria are single-celled creatures and can reproduce on their own and survive in huge variety of environments, living comfortably in extreme hot or extreme cold, in radioactive waste, and even in the human body. The fossil record shows that bacteria have been thriving on Earth for more than 3.5 billion years. Most bacteria are harmless to us, and many are actually helpful. For example, certain strains of bacteria thrive in our digestive system where they help us break down food. No wonder probiotic yogurt has been all the rage lately. Trillions of bacterial microorganisms live in our bodies, making themselves at home in our digestive system, on our skin, and even in our eyes and nose. In fact, according to Megan Jardine, Associate Director of Diabetes Nutrition Education at Physicians Committee, we might actually be only 10% human. 90% of our cells are non-human microbial cells. In recent years, scientists have put this number at closer to 40% human cells, but that's still pretty crazy when you think about it. Although less than 1% of all bacteria are actually harmful to people, the ones that do cause diseases can do some serious damage. Bacteria give off toxic chemicals which can damage human tissue and make us sick. The most dramatic example of a bacterial infection is the bubonic plague in Europe in the 1300s. As the plague spread, people throughout Europe were coming down with fevers, chills, vomiting and diarrhea, and aches and pains. They also had nasty black boils that oozed blood and pus, a gruesome symptom that earned this plague the name the Black Death. We now know that the infection was caused by a bacteria called Yersinia pestis, but of course, people knew nothing about that in the 14th century, and by the time the plague subsided, it had killed an estimated 20 million people, a third of the entire population of Europe at the time. Since precise numbers are hard to come by, the death toll could have been much higher. Some experts estimate that up to 60% of the population was wiped out by a tiny single-celled bacteria. But thankfully, we can now treat bacteria infections with antibiotics, which kill the bacteria causing the infection, or at least slow its growth. Antibiotics are a fairly recent discovery. The first antibiotic was used in 1936, and it wasn't until the late 18th century that a German doctor named Robert Koch even discovered that bacteria cause diseases. In the year 1900, before the invention of antibiotics, nearly 30% of all deaths worldwide could be blamed on bacterial infections that could be easily treated with antibiotics today. Viruses are much more fragile than bacteria. The virus's core of genetic material is protected only by a thin protein coating. A virus can't survive without a host and can only reproduce by attaching itself to the host cell and inserting its genetic material into it. Unlike bacteria, nearly all viruses cause diseases in humans. Viruses are usually programmed to target specific cells before it gets to work, either replicating itself or making new viruses until the host cells burst and die, or turning normal healthy cells into malignant ones. Viruses are responsible for a lot of common diseases, everything from the common cold and flu to painful conditions like the chickenpox and shingles to serious infectious diseases like hepatitis and herpes. All are caused by viruses. The 1918 Spanish flu was the deadliest pandemic in history, and it was all caused by a microscopic virus. By the time the outbreak ended in